Hey everybody, this is Albert Campa, CantinaMX podcast. Back again for some football discussion. We got a special guest today, and I'll introduce him last. But let's say hello to Joel and Jaime. How are you guys doing?
Hey, what's up, everybody? We have some fun stuff to talk about this week. Well, how you doing?
I'm doing good.
Cool, man.
Pretty good so far, you know.
Yeah. Well, glad to have you guys. So our special guest for today, and an interesting topic that I wanted to discuss specifically with him. He's the man with the knowledge on all this. We have Walter Franco. How's it going, Walter?
Good, man. Beto, good to see you. Joel, Jaime, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion. I guess we'll start off with this social media in English going on with the Liga MX, and this has sort of been an ongoing thing for a while now. As slowly Liga MX clubs have started doing social media in English, the Mexican national team started theirs as well, and just recently, some team, Chivas, came out with their English account, and that just started like an uproar. I saw a lot of tweets that I guess people were thinking in their mind, but never said it out loud. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Walter, but ever since the English social media and Mexican soccer came out, no one ever said it. But now that Chivas came out and started doing, I guess because of the errors, and you're like the guru in detecting English grammar errors in these tweets and stuff. But maybe it was because the errors, and now people are saying that they should look into hiring like Mexican Americans that actually speak English and all this stuff.
Yeah,
And people are coming out and actually vote.
First, I should disclaim that I'm not an English by any, so you know, but some of the errors are pretty bad that they should be obvious to any basic level education. I'm sure there's probably other things that are probably correct, but I would defer to a major university. But some of them are pretty obvious, so that's why I've kind of
Yeah.
gone hard at some of those accounts.
And some of it was like funny, like they sort of, like, the Chivas account made fun, and they were saying like what did they the mix of English and Spanish. But so the whole discussion is around the job itself. And would a Mexican club like Chivas or America or any of the clubs ever hire a Mexican American that lives in the U.S. to actually do this position of a social media manager and handle their Twitter account? Would that ever be a possibility, do you think?
Well, man, so I mean, this question can kind of go a lot of different ways, but to briefly answer it, you've already seen two instances where where a Mexican club has hired some, or even so. The first example is Tate. She's in the soccer Tijuana, Seattle, but she at this about 7 or 8 years ago, and I think like a local publication in San Diego, she would go to Cholo's games and kind of be involved there, and she had kind of a prominent role there in the San Diego soccer. And then she, I think through the right connections, she pitched uh, English language program content to Santos Laguna. They loved it. They hired her, and then she moved to Santos Laguna. And then so she, after Cholos became the second, became the second club in Liga MX to content. I've been doing so for several years. And now with Orlegi, which is the owner of Santos Laguna, buying Atlas last year or a year and a half ago, he's overtaken now Atlas in English with their content, and also Santos. So that's the reason why Atlas started doing stuff in English, because of the ownership group, also because Tate is there doing that. So that's the first example of someone that's hired that's not Mexican or Spanish native speaking. And then the second example is Ted Brooks, who was hired to run Club America, or to launch Club America's language. He was originally with Philadelphia Union doing their social media. And again, I think this is 2 years ago this happened. And that was one of my favorite Liga MX official language accounts, because through his experience in MLS and just being in the US and just different best practices that he's had there from media, like, it was a really fun account, a lot of good content, original, a lot of personality. And but then I think he lasted maybe a year because he had an opportunity to go back to MLS. Now he's at Inter. And so since he left, there's been a significant drop in content and quality on the side for Club America. So as of now, with the exception of Santos Laguna and Atlas, and I think also Tijuana, I think it has a Mexican American or someone at least that's on the border that speaks English well enough, but everyone else is non-native Spanish speaker. All the other clubs, and to be honest, it shows. And I'm also talking about the Mexican national too.
Mhm.
So I think when we're talking about, like, I guess for future reference, when I'm referring to clubs, I'm also referring to the Mexican as well.
Yeah,
Does that kind of answer your question?
yeah, I think so. From my perspective, like when I see all the, well, first of all, it's not my aspiration to get one of these jobs, but but I actually sort of think that it's good that these guys, like, I even replied to the Chivas account. He made a mistake, and I said, "Hey man, keep up the good work," and I corrected him. But I think it's good that at least these guys are getting a chance, and they're in Mexico, and they have like a job that they're doing, they're working, and they're not getting that opportunity taken from them.
What are the chances it's someone's nephew, man? They just he
That's
didn't
true.
even earn it. Just
That's
give it to
Hijo de
him, dude.
papi, hijo de papi.
Let Junior handle it, dude. How
That,
hard can this
that's
be?
true. That's true. But Junior might need that stuff also, man. He might need
Nah, if you're a junior, you don't need it, dude.
a junior is the guy who takes over his father's company, though, man. Like, the dad's not going to be around. The company owner's not going to be around forever, so he's got to pass that on to somebody. Or would you rather have like a spoiled Mexican American, take over that job and
No, if there's someone over there that has a good grasp of how to, like, it's because it's not just knowing the language, it's also like how we communicate is a bit different.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest things too, is that I've had discussions with other people, like in the industry and just general public, is that it's not enough to speak English, because a lot of these people, I imagine that a lot of these guys that are running these accounts in English, they probably speak really good English or understand it. At minimum, they probably understand it perfectly. So if you were to speak to them and try to have a conversation with them, if they were to watch TV or Netflix or anything in the US, they'd probably have no problem understanding it. But expressing themselves or understanding, like, the nuances, the jerga, like the vocabulary, the slang, like the cultural differences, like that's where the issue is, right? So I mean, all of us, like, I speak Spanish. I think all of you guys speak Spanish to a degree. But I still consider myself pocho. So, like, I can watch any Spanish TV program. I can live in Mexico and understand every single thing that's being said without any issue. But for me to replicate something exactly how it should correctly in Mexico, I'm not going to. I'm gonna say it in my version, my Mexican American version, right? And so I think that's the equivalent of what's happening over there.
Yeah.
So imagine if
you know what, Franco, what you're saying, like, over there, if you start talking, they'll spot it right away.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And
So
it's the
that's
same with us.
yeah, no, that's exactly what I was getting at. So imagine FC Dallas, right? They say, hey, we want to start to penetrate the Mexican market. We're going to start doing activations in Mexico.
blah blah blah, and let's FC Dallas or any MLS club, and if they hire me, let's say they hire any of them, hire me and say, hey, Walter, you speak Spanish, really well, you understand everything they say, so we're going to hire you to start doing social media over there, right? And so I could probably get a lot of things right and get a good understanding of things, but 100% I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to get an accent wrong. I'm going to get a reference wrong. Sometimes I'm going to do kind of a Google Translate in my mind of what I'm trying to say in English, but how it should sound in Spanish, and it's probably going to be off. And what would happen? I would be a laughing stock in Mexico, right? They're like, "Este pocho que está haciendo?" Like, he doesn't. And then not only that, but just cultural, relevance, like to what a Mexican is dealing with on a daily basis in their community in Guadalajara or wherever, right? Like, I'm not going to be able to be in tune with them from afar, and I'm not going to be able to get certain relevant topics with them. And that's exactly what's happening right now with these accounts in the Mexican national team, is that, number one, they're not native Spanish English speakers. Maybe they went to school for a few years, college. Some of them I know personally that some just went a year or two to college in the U.S., and so that qualifies them enough for, being a English speaker. And so, number one, that, and then the other thing too is being in Mexico, they're not really aware what's happening here. What us as Mexican Americans are going through on a daily basis with, just speaking, of recent current events with Black Lives Matter, and the things that we had to deal with growing up as Mexican Americans, and the things that we care about. Obviously, a lot of the Mexican culture is ingrained in us with food and certain traditions and other things, but a Mexican American is so different than an actual Mexican, right? In so many different ways, and that shows in their tweets. And there's definitely a cultural disconnect between a Mexican and a Mexican American on social media. And so that's why I've been advocating for 5 years now that, number one, Liga MX, Mexican national team, Liga MX, the league itself, they need to start adapting their message in English to Mexican Americans, but they actually need to have boots on the ground, like people in the U.S. that are understanding what's going on, that can have a relevant, that can actually resonate with, the Mexican American demographic. And that's why I think, really, if you guys follow what Bayern Munich has been doing in the U.S. with their social media, they have their own U.S. account, and that to me is the standard for how a foreign club should activate in the U.S. from a social media standpoint, because they took the time to invest, and they have Americans in the U.S. doing their social media. They're able to adapt their message. It's a universal message that, whether you're, Caucasian, whether you're Mexican American, you can still relate somehow to that account, and you can still be connected to them. And that's what Liga MX is, and their clubs and the Mexican national team are missing. And by having people that are non-native English speakers, and having people still based in Mexico, it's just going to cause these issues. Aside from, and not just from the grammatical issues too. I think one of the things that I've been harping on recently too, that you guys may have seen with several accounts, is when they announce game times, they always say at 1800 hours, right? Who uses that in the U.S. unless you're in the military, right? At 1800, 1900 hours.
Used to it.
I actually use it,
and then
I'm one of the minorities.
Yeah, but I mean the mainstream, right? Like nobody uses that. And then too, one of the recent issues too is that, especially with the Mexican national team, is they keep saying, whether it's 1900 hours, but they always say CST, which I think for them, they think that means central time, which it does, but CST means Central Standard Time, but Central Standard Time is only November through March, and March through November, which we're in right now, is Central Daylight Time, or CDT. Right? And so there's things like that it's like, man, like for you enjoy it?
I enjoy it. Though. Like that, like those, like the micro infarct, or the chronicle.
Right. I know, right? The chronicle and micro infarct. Yeah. So I mean, it just shows you, is like, a lot of people are saying like, hey, it's good that these teams are doing this. Like, it's the intention that matters. And like, I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess, but like, think about it. This isn't a blog, right? These aren't volunteers. This isn't a charity. This isn't people just kind of saying, hey, we're gonna, just do this as a hobby. Like these are multi-million-dollar clubs. Most of them are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They have presence both in Mexico and the U.S. Like, there should be a minimum standard of quality for their communications, right? And to be honest, the majority just aren't meeting that quality right now. And again, it goes, if they were making these mistakes in Spanish, they wouldn't be forgiven. They'd be a laughing stock. So why is it okay for them to make these mistakes in English? And then the other point to that too is, you know, one of the big issues that I don't think has been talked about is most likely that CM is probably the best or the most fluent English speaker in the whole club, right? And so if they're making mistakes, there's no one above them to proofread or to edit or to make sure that that's a correct translation or correct intonation or whatever. And so there's no proofreading process, and so they're just publishing out anything, and then it's out in the open, and then everyone's seeing, hey, oh, that's actually a mistake. This is a mistake, and then the Mexican national team has often been called out on mistakes, and they delete their tweets 2 or 3 times before they actually get it right. And so, anyway, it's definitely been an interesting ride for sure.
That is probably with a hangover tweeting.
But all
Well,
right, my biggest
question.
My biggest question is, a lot of these English accounts, I mean, they only have like what, 1,000, maybe 2,000 followers. Like, what's the biggest English account in the Liga MX?
I think the Mexican national team has 60,000 plus, right?
Okay.
I think. Hold on one sec. I think Cholos have.
Because I'm looking at Atlas, they have
more
1829. I mean, you know, we're talking, it's not that much. And Atlas is
probably,
but
they probably bought them, dude.
That's another discussion.
They're all like in India and China.
Because obviously, like, the amount the following in English, it is growing, and there is a demand for it for pochos like all of us. But obviously, it's like compared to the Spanish like accounts, like they're a fraction of the size.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah. I think you have to think about it too. Is that, you know, that's really all they're doing right now though is just some content, which is typically just tweets, right? But there's no real other engagement. There's no press conferences. There's no engagement with the players. There's no, you know, trying to do watch parties or getting information from fans in the U.S. And so that takes time, though. That's like an investment, and that's at this point really it's just about planting seeds, and you're not going to see an immediate result in like 5 years. I think, you know, with Bayern Munich, they've had their offices in New York now for, I think, I want to say coming on 6 years now. So they've organically and slowly grown their presence in the U.S. through watch parties and through other initiatives. But I mean, and I think they're over 100K now in followers, Bayern Munich, and for the U.S. account, it might be more than that now. But again, it's taken time for them to get to that point. And so I think for these clubs and the Mexican national team, a lot more still needs to be done from their end instead of just tweeting out and content. And I think, though, had they done this 10 years ago and got in at the very beginning and started to have that content, then the numbers would be greater now. So I don't think that's a reflection on the lack of demand. I think it's just a reflection of lack of strategy from the teams on activating.
It's German efficiency versus Mexican desmadre.
Yeah.
Chivas TV, man. Sorry, Jaime, I didn't mean to cut you. Chivas TV, they got, what is it now, 5 years?
I don't remember.
No, I don't think it's that long.
5 years?
Chivas TV?
Yeah, it's
I think it's like 3 years, no?
And man, it's just as bad as when it started, at least content-wise.
They started May of 2016.
So
okay, so 4 years now.
Going.
One thing that they do.
Cancel mine. They didn't offer shit.
Well, they do like okay, so they do at least a little bit. I remember back a while, like a year or two ago, the national team used to have like Periscope or like Twitter Live of like behind the scenes with the national team, like when they're training or right before a press conference, and they would talk like what's going on, and so you could get like I think that's what Walter's talking about, the little social.
Yeah. Well, but and to your point there, though, so they've had some turnover there too. I know from personally what's been going on there, and so they had some involvement with an agency to help them do. The original person that was there that was doing a lot of good things eventually got transferred to another department, and now someone else is in there. and they haven't followed the same. And they have a new director over that department, so their strategy has changed now, which is a shame. And obviously, with COVID, it's kind of harder to get that same type of in-player engagement without official Mexico training or matches over the last several months.
Yeah, so I think that would be good. And Chivas TV does that a little bit. Like they would do sort of some behind the scenes or like a post or pre-game.
How do you know, Chick? How do you know, Chick?
I would see it. Like it used to be on.
It
used to be on YouTube. They used to be on YouTube before the whole Chivas TV.
But here's the thing though, Beto, too, is that's where these clubs need to investigate. Do Mexican Americans want to consume the same? Do they consume content, like non-game content, the same way that Mexicans do? Does that make sense?
That's a good question.
So I think like
your approach has to be different.
Yeah, your approach has to be different. Yeah, you have to understand, like, do Mexican Americans really care about that thing? Like, I go to Mexico often. I have family there, and so just culturally too, there's so many differences to how even the media presents certain things. Like when we there's certain things that I see on TV that I'm like, that is so cheesy that just wouldn't fly in the U.S. even on Univision or Telemundo, but on TV Azteca or Televisa, it totally flies there, and people are crying and they love it. They're eating it up. But in the U.S., it wouldn't work. You know what I mean? So I think there's some things that are similar like that when it comes to sports and sports content. So behind the scenes, things like that. And so that's where clubs really need to understand, which is the low-hanging fruit, which is Mexican Americans, understand their base and say, what are their consumption habits? They're obviously probably into other sports. What are those other sports doing to engage with their fans? How can we adapt some of that, but put like a Mexican American spin on it? You know what I mean? So all those things take time and investment.
TikTok videos. That's how
get that stuff out of here, man.
Luis Hernandez killing it though.
Yeah, Luis Hernandez. You're not a fan, Beto?
No, not a fan. I think one of his videos was okay, and the rest I was just like shaking my head.
Oh,
really?
No,
I love it. I love it.
These are like
you're missing out.
That I really like.
2 comments though on this. So, like, it could be in reverse. Like if you hire a Mexican American, they're not going to know the intricacies of Mexico that might be applicable to even an English content social media account. Like maybe they say, "Oh, we're going to give a signed jersey to El Peje," and they'd be like, "What's that? Who's that? Or what are you talking about?" And so it could come in reverse. The other comment is,
but no, but let me yeah. if you let me kind of counter that point. So I mean, the English language CM, like, they're not necessarily the ones that are creating the whole strategy for that arm of communications, right? So if there is something where there's going to be a public appearance for the president, for the Peje or whatever, like, that's where you rely on your boss saying, hey, we're going to have this appearance with the Mexican president. This is kind of this is what's going on culturally, and then giving that creativity to the Mexican American CM in the US, assuming that's how it was, and saying, how can we adapt this? And so it takes strategy and collaboration for it to be something relevant, right? Yeah. And so I don't think it's an impossible task, but that's kind of where you have to understand that it would have to be different. Like, I bet you, like, obviously, having worked in Mexico and having family in Mexico and being really close ties there, like, I know who Peje is, and I know who you guys probably know who he is too. But how many other Mexican Americans do you think could name not only what the name of the Mexican president is and what his nickname is? What percentage would you guys put it? I would put it less than 30%.
Not or even like what party he is.
Yeah, or even what party. Yeah, many people don't know what Morena means. They don't even know what El PRI or PAN mean, right? Yeah. And so that just shows you again that huge cultural gap between Mexican and Mexican Americans, right? They may have seen Peña Nieto or El Peje through different memes, through WhatsApp, through their tias or whatever, but that's probably the extent of their knowledge, right?
Yeah, that's good points. The other comment I was going to make was I guess Joel sort of mentioned it. I guess the example of looking foolish, not knowing the culture and all the intricacies of everything. But we have sort of some examples in what's that? I forget his name. He's a former player that's on Univision. He doesn't speak Spanish very well, but he's always on the broadcast. You also have
you're talking about Hristo Stoichkov?
Yeah, Hristo Stoichkov.
Oh,
he's on
the
there.
Bulgarian.
And yeah, the Bulgarian. And sometimes you'll be like, what the heck is this guy saying? But he's an asset. I enjoy it, even though And then the same with
but you have to remember though, with him though, he's speaking Spanish, right? His only ties is to the Spanish languages from his time in Barcelona, right? Yeah. So he really has no connection at all with Latin America other than just being in Miami for Univision or TUDN.
The other guy,
then you also have Balboa.
Balboa is cringe, bro. That guy, I don't know. I don't like that guy.
No, he's nice. I've met him in person. He's a really genuine good guy. So you can't talk trash about him with me.
I'm not talking trash. I'm just saying he's cringe.
The Spanish broadcast is like, it's total gringoized, and that's the way it's gonna be. Well, he's Argentinian, I guess, from Argentina.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's obvious. There's the accent there. There's the mistakes there, but it's acceptable. It's something that he does provide a good some good insight because of his knowledge with the U.S. national team. So that that's something there as well. That these types of mistakes, I guess, if you want to call it that, are normal, are acceptable, and it provides some type of even nice color to the broadcast or to the content.
I know they recently started broadcasting some TUDN games in English on like the alternate channels, and yeah, I mean,
well, they started that a few years ago too. Remember, through Facebook Live, where they would do a few games through Univision back before, or Univision Deportes before it was TUDN, and so it's good to see them branch out more into that to make it more official through the alternate TUDN channels. And then, of course, with Cholos the last year and a half, they've been doing some games on Fox Sports 1 or Fox Sports 2 in English, or FS1 or FS2. So that's kind of going to be a harder sell. And that's again, it has to be. I think we're judging too quick on the English language stuff, not on the. I'm not talking about like the mistakes that are being made, but just on the immediate results, because it's still. All this stuff that's happening is still within like a 5-year time frame still. And so you need to give it more time to, I think, to organically grow and kind of grow with the changing evolution of the Mexican American demographic, which over time continues to speak less and less Spanish.
Yeah, so like, let's, I guess, not really shifting, but I think more of what you wanted to discuss, and maybe this can point us in the right direction. So like I think Amy had a thread where she was ranting about this, and I think there was some numbers and discussion about moving like whoever this content manager would be in the US, or moving, would they be better moving to Mexico and all this stuff. Is that something that you wanted to discuss on the podcast about, like the
so I mean, Amy definitely had a lot of frustrations, and I definitely understand where she's coming from. I think there's definitely been a huge effort by a lot of people in the the quote unquote Liga MX in English community, going back to, as we were talking about earlier with Joel and others who from 15-20 years ago that were really the first to start talking about Mexican soccer in English. And then a lot of other people have come through recently over the last 10 years, with including Amy and Tom Marshall, Weasel, and other people, Cesar. And so there's definitely a strong community, and I think and I asked her about it to get more of her thoughts of what her solution was, and she didn't say it, but I kind of got the impression that maybe her and other people are frustrated, saying that, hey, there's so many people out there who are talented that have been doing this for a long time, as their passion. These are the people that should be getting shots at doing this work officially for clubs. And so I definitely get that sentiment. But the reality is it's just a different world in Mexico, man, with soccer clubs, with their hiring processes. It really is a network. It's cliche as it sounds, and this is the same in the U.S. too. In business, it's about who you know and getting the right people, and that's number one. Is that they already have Mexican clubs have this structure of networks where they know people and they know what type of people they want. Number one. Number two, they really don't look outside of Mexico to hire, with the rare exception with Kim Tate and Ted Brooks. But those are people that actually moved to Mexico. Why? Because these Mexican clubs, for as much money as they have and as rich as they are, they simply don't have in their budget to pay for someone in the U.S. They can't pay a U.S. market salary for this work. And to kind of give you an idea, so for an MLS, for a similar role in MLS, you're looking at somewhere in the 35 to 45,000 annual salary range. So if depending where you're living, that might be enough to afford an apartment. If you live in LA, you're probably still need a room, be roommates with like 6 other people to afford to survive, right? And so, but that's not even how much the CM in Mexico's boss is making. And so to kind of give you an idea of, this was about 3 years ago, we as an agency made a pitch to a major, one of the biggest MLS, or excuse me, Liga MX clubs to help them create a strategy for their social media in the U.S. and actually start to execute and manage it for them. And our proposed fee for doing that long term on an annual basis was somewhere in the mid 30,000s. And the feedback that we got from the club immediately was like, "Hey, this is a great service that you guys provide, but unfortunately we can't afford it. In fact, the fee that you're proposing is more than our VP of communications makes in Mexico, and so we can't justify paying you guys that much if the person that you'd be reporting to makes less than you, much less than you." And so, long story short, an English-speaking CM or any CM for Liga MX club, you're making probably somewhere between $15,000 to $20,000 annually a year. Which, if you live in Mexico, maybe, depending what market you live in, you could probably afford a 2-bedroom apartment by yourself. Probably not enough to support a family when you start to take all the other expenses into account. But I mean, I don't know how many people from the U.S. are willing to move, with the exception of the people that I just mentioned, right? And I think in the case of Ted, I don't want to speculate what his motivations were, but I think maybe he just said, "Hey, this is a great opportunity to take this huge adventure, to go down to Mexico, work for Club America. I'll go there for a year or two and then jump ship again." And that's exactly what he did. He went down there, stayed there for a year, and then now he's at Inter Miami. And so, they wouldn't be able to afford to pay him what he was making in Philadelphia, but it looks like he was willing to take a, economic hit for a year to get a, international experience for a major club. So I think those are the two things: is having that right network in Mexico, and then the salary expectations. They just simply can't afford to pay someone in the U.S. what someone in the U.S. should be paid for. And then the other thing too is, oftentimes, for as great content as the Liga MX community has been doing in the U.S., sometimes that content doesn't really align with what the club's values are, if that makes sense. So whatever. So if I have my own blog and it has a lot of views and followers and a lot of influence for Liga MX, and I might go to Chivas or someone else and they're like, "Yeah, you're doing a great job, but this is the direction that we're thinking. This is what we want to do. So if you can't adapt to that, then we can't hire you because we have a different reality." And that lies more on the fault of Liga MX clubs, because once again, it's the lack of understanding of the Mexican American demographic. A lot of clubs still think whatever we do for Mexicans here in this market, we can imitate or replicate in the U.S. because they're the same demographic. They're the same. They care about the same things, and that's not the case. Sorry, that's kind of a long-winded answer, Beto. Hopefully that answer
good.
kind of.
Yeah, that's some good information. I think Amy was talking, or I'm not sure for sure, but the Chivas English account, the unofficial one, I guess, is run by, I think, Melissa is her name, and she lives in San Luis Potosí. But like you said, you have to be, San Luis Potosí isn't Guadalajara, so you have to have that connection. And I think she probably would have been a good. I think, well, she does have an accent, Spanish Mexican accent, but she does, I think, do well in her English. I also was thinking of like Eric Gomez. He does something else, I think, but I think he's from San Diego.
Yeah, he's kind of like me. He's from San Diego and Tijuana, and he's like someone like him or Melissa. I don't know Melissa that well, but someone like Eric would be great because he fully understands. He lives in Mexico City. He still works for ESPN as a journalist, but he gets it because he's been on the border. He knows both worlds of Mexico and the U.S. And so he would be able to understand the cultural differences and everything, right? So someone like him would be really interesting. But I think it's worth mentioning too. I don't know, Jaime, where you're from, or Joel, where you're from originally. But so like I said, I'm from San Diego and Tijuana. But even Tijuana is so different from the rest of Mexico, geographically, culturally, and economically. I mean, I think it was really until the 70s or 80s when they barely started using pesos in Tijuana and that whole area. Before then, it was just dollars. My mom grew up in. She was born in Sonora, but she grew up in Rosarito, which is just south of Tijuana. And her and my grandma and my uncles and aunts, like they used U.S. dollars when they were growing up in Mexico because they were so much more tied to San Diego. And even the Cholos have admitted themselves that they're more Tijuana as a community, as a market, is more culturally tied to San Diego than to Mexico City. And so that's one of the things that you kind of have to think is that, you know, it's just Mexico is just kind of a weird place because it's the core southern Mexico is just so different from the rest of the La Frontera, and just like I said with Mexican Americans.
Yeah. Oh, that's how it goes, man. That's some interesting information that you gave, especially on the on sort of the numbers behind all that, and that makes sense. Like the salary numbers. I remember I was at a game in San Antonio. I talked to this guy, a photographer. I was doing photography, and this guy was from Querétaro. I was talking to him, and I think he said he does as many Liga MX games as he can around the Querétaro area. I think he said 2,000 to 3,000 pesos a game is what he gets for his photos. So that tells a lot. But yeah, Joel and Jaime, did you have anything else for Alter? Any questions or?
No, very insightful stuff, man. Thank you for hopping on and spending time with us. Yeah, obviously the wages, there's a completely different, market out there in Mexico. I mean, I know where I go in my hometown, like the average person makes like 300 pesos a day. So to ask 600,000 pesos for a year, I mean, that very few people make that. So,
but I think if you have someone in Mex that at least with a bit more understanding, they could hire someone. They could get someone here from the U.S. to do it for free, because there's a lot of the soccer. When you see a lot of the soccer websites, most of the people writing are doing it either for free or very cheap.
Yeah.
And so, if I think for Twitter and stuff like that, but you could find a bunch of people that would jump on it and be willing to do it. Similar how you said that one guy that flew down to Mex, but I mean they would just stay here. But I'm saying you just need that one person that's on top of it to make sure they're not messing around or they're not gonna end up, like we've seen with some accounts where someone forgot they were logged into the company account and then they tweeted something or they like liked like a porn pic or something like that. So yeah, but I mean, what happened?
No, I was gonna say, Joel, it's even if they like hire like a college intern, you know what I mean, like a Mexican American college intern that needs to get credit for a social media class, but still have someone supervising him or her in the U.S. to kind of like just get the ball rolling and at least getting grammar stuff correct and other things correct. That's one step, and then the other thing too is just hiring an agency. I mean, so another great example of foreign clubs doing the right thing. So the Wolverhampton Wolves. So they created a Spanish account, and we've all seen what they've done to activate the Mexican market because of Raúl Jiménez. Even was it West Ham with Chicharito? They hired, I think, Martin Palermo or Martin, not Martin Palermo, but Martin del Palacio, I think, to do their Spanish media, social media for them while they had Chicharito. And so that's an example. They're actually hiring someone Spanish speaking, native Spanish speaker who understands the Mexican market because he's Mexican. And so they had success there. And then Bayer Leverkusen with Chicharito did the same thing. And so those are examples. And I think with those, I think in the case of Wolverhampton, they actually hired a PR/social media agency in Mexico City to do their tweets. So they don't have someone in England doing that for them. They have someone in Mexico tweeting on their behalf. So that just shows like that's the strategy that needs to be taken. And so I feel like I'm throwing out free tips here for clubs and the league, but I really think that the majority of clubs don't have or actually most clubs don't have the financial resources to have their own, U.S. based office. I don't know if you guys knew or not, but Club America a year and a half ago, they opened up a New York office, but that project only lasted about 9 months, and so they closed their office after 9 months, and a lot had to do with the fact that they weren't seeing the ROI after 9 months, but no one's going to see an ROI after 9 months. They need to stick to, commit and invest in a project. But really one of the things that I think would be beneficial for Liga MX is to actually do what Bundesliga is doing. So Bundesliga has New York City offices to obviously help with their league, but they've also created an office space in New York so that other Bundesliga clubs that don't have the financial resources to have their own office in New York, that they can use that space to set up meetings with potential sponsors. So it's basically a WeWork for all their Bundesliga clubs, a free office space for them. And so I really think that if Liga MX did something similar, I don't think it would make sense to do it in New York. I think maybe in Miami, just because of its proximity to TUDN, or at minimum Dallas or LA, if they were to open up a league office in one of those markets and then have space so that every other Liga MX club can have, a shared space so that when they have meetings with potential sponsors, that they can go there, or that at that point Liga MX can hire a PR agency to help all the, Liga MX clubs with social media in English, and that person or that agency could be based out of that market. And so it's like little things like that obviously require an investment, but if they're able to invest and actually have a plan on how to monetize their social media presence, which is key. If you can have, an English Twitter language account that after every goal it's sponsored by, Wells Fargo Bank, or if it's sponsored by, I don't know, Toyota in the US, like that's how you start to monetize your presence, and then you start to really see the ROI from your investment. So that's kind of how that should work. But like I said, in the case of Club America with New York, they just kind of lost patience and they didn't see the ROI right away, and so they kind of moved away from it.
I'm pretty sure they sent some juniors, man. They were just partying all night. I could see it already, man. But what you're saying about just like copying what Bundesliga is doing, which is it's proving it's being effective for them. I think that's something that the league could definitely do, especially the league as a whole. You just seen how they recently added Caliente as their like
league-wide sponsor,
online sponsor or something.
Yeah.
And so I do think that would have been, I don't know what online sponsor means. Probably just more money for them. It's just probably a name, and the league just pocketed this cash. But I mean, they could have done that just off of that sponsorship like that alone, and set something up like that. But I don't think that a lot of the clubs presidents they think like that. Like, that's
Yeah,
just not.
I think the mentality of Mexico is the short game. They're not looking at long-term investments because they might not be there. You look at all the teams that have been like, musical chairs. So they don't really understand like investment and like the long term of,
No,
of this stuff.
I think they understand investment, but it's like you said, they might not have the team the next day, which is what we've seen with a lot of clubs, that change owners all the time.
Yeah. Well, and I think in addition to that, though, is that at least in the U.S., Liga MX clubs are mal acostumbrados, and what I mean by that is that they're spoiled. They've been spoiled to the point that they just expect money to come to them. That people give them money before they have to do anything. What I mean by that is they, for the last almost 20 years, they've been coming to the U.S. to collect a paycheck for friendly matches, right? Working through promoters or being paid by MLS clubs directly, and so they're used to doing that, and they're used to Univision and now TUDN paying their broadcast rights, and then brokering with Soccer Net Marketing to do the Campeón de Campeones and now the Leagues Cup and everything. So they're used to knowing, when they think US, someone's gonna pay us, and then we have to. But they're not used to them actually taking the initiative themselves in the US and realizing, if I need to do that, means that I actually need to invest my money, but I don't want to invest that money because I don't want to wait 3 to 4 years to see that ROI. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of, I think, where there's a disconnect too with Liga MX clubs, is that they just wait. They expect people just to come to them for ideas. And I've seen that personally is pitch them an idea.
USA.
What's that?
You just described Chivas USA.
Remember?
So I mean, put the name, throw the jersey, and the people will show up.
Yeah, and I mean, we can. That's a whole different other podcast for why that was an interesting case study. But I mean, does that make sense? Though it's like they're to the point where they're just so used, and you know what? And it's not just Liga MX clubs. I should clarify that. A lot of European clubs too have that mentality when they think about, hey, we want to open up an office in New York or in the U.S. Like the U.S. is such an untapped market opportunity for us for a soccer club, and they just think that whether whatever club you are, that you're just going to get to the U.S. and people are just going to start paying you money and take you all over the country for friendly matches and whatever. And so it's not just a Liga MX thing, but it's disappointing to see Liga MX take that approach, though, because it's their neighbor to the north. They're the clubs that stand to benefit the most commercially from their presence in the U.S. as opposed to Bayern Munich and other clubs because of 30 to 40 million Mexican Americans that live there. But it's funny, speaking of the European clubs, I was speaking to some promoters at SoccerX in November for this international soccer conference that was held in Miami, and there was a group that said, hey, we want you to help us get some Greek teams to play friendly matches in the US. And I was like, okay, well, what are their expectations financially? Because to me, understanding the US market, there's basically zero interest or demand for for paying top dollar for a Greek soccer club to play a friendly match against either an MLS club or anyone else. And their demands were so high. No, they need to get paid this amount of money in a bonus fee. Then they need to have these types of accommodations. And I just kind of chuckled, and nothing ever happened. I think a part because of COVID, but number two, I know that no team would be interested. MLS team would be interested in hosting a Greek club.
Bowl of green M&Ms, dude.
Yeah, and it's not because the Greek clubs are bad. It's just because there's not enough Greek demographic or Greek American presence in a specific market to warrant having them come and be paid an exorbitant amount. And that's just, again, talking about the expectations for European clubs, that they think, okay, we'll walk in the US and everyone will want us. But no, that's not the case.
Only if they had the Holy Neri, then maybe a little bit.
Olympiacos, man.
Pulido, dude. No. Pulido, man.
That is Pulido. No. We don't need no Pulido. He's washed, man.
Yeah, you definitely hit it on the nail on the head, though, with the whole, like, where the U.S. we're like, when it comes to like people in Mexico, they're always used to us giving them things. So it's like, yeah, I want to run your Twitter account. Oh, cool. How much are you going to pay me for that? It's like, what? No.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah,
that's because they're used to being the cash cow. Like they're used to being a monster in the market.
What?
But the English market, they can't be a monster. Like when you talk about the Bundesliga or like Wolves or what was it? When Chicharito was over there, they created the Spanish account. That's the Spanish Mexican monster market that's there. But an English account is not a monster like we were talking about all the the followers that these English accounts have. Another comment real quick, and then I'll let Jaime say what he's got to say. Whenever you said Martin Palermo, I think Joel and Jaime like flinched a little bit. They got scared, and like a little bit of sweat started dripping down their forehead. They got
what?
What? That's
from
fake news. Fake news.
They got traumatized like Bofo back in the day.
Like Bofo rustled La Bombonera, dude.
It's
the other way around, dude.
He did. No, dude.
Not just any player can walk into that stadium and make the crowd go ape shit.
No, dude.
And Bofo Marinho did just that, dude.
He bowed up when he was in Guadalajara, and then he tried to extend that that confidence in Argentina, and he got shut down. And he bent the knee, and he put down his head. He realized where he was at. But anyway.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
One of the things I want to comment on, there's so many things about the Bundesliga that I wish the Mexican League would adopt. Number one, collective TV rights. Sell the league as a package together, not like, oh, I'm going to watch the Chivas game on freaking Telemundo, then I got to hop on Fox Sport. It's like, no, get all the teams, get one price, and just sell the entire package and just sell that to Europe, sell it to Asia, sell it to the United States. That's how you get more exposure. Another thing with the Bundesliga is like most of the German national team is like playing in the Bundesliga, so they don't really export that many players to like England, Spain, Italy, all that. So they have a very competitive league. And the reason I mentioned that is because Gerardo Arteaga is joining a team in Belgium, Genk, and everyone's all excited about him. Oh, he's going to Europe. It's like excited, and I'm like, why should we be celebrating? This is Belgium. It's not it's a farmers league. And maybe this is a hot take, but I personally think that the Liga MX is a better league than the Belgian league. And and a lot of people are saying, oh, well, he's getting exposure. He's getting exposure to all these teams in Europe. And I'm like, well, if we were to have, like, again, collective TV rights, we would have the exposure that these players need without having to export to these small clubs in Europe, because a lot of the times these sort of projects don't go very well. Look at what happened to Ochoa's maybe not the best example, but he spent his time in Belgium, and we also have Omar Goer, who's been hopping around from team to team in Belgium, and they haven't leapfrogged from that league to a bigger club. Whereas they could have stayed in Mexico, they could have gotten the exposure they needed, and they could have went straight to like a big club. So, yeah.
That exposure, just quick note, that I don't buy it. I think you make it to the national team, you'll get good exposure. I don't think you have to go and play in Greece or all those leagues. I mean, if you want to, that's cool, and you want to be in Europe, but just for that, like that's your only, that's the main reason. I think you'll get it just being in the national team.
It's like
I have a counterpoint for Jaime. I think how old is this player? I think he's 18, 19?
I gotta double check, but yeah, he's a youngin.
Yeah, he's a youngin, right? So he's still very much before his prime, right? So I think I look at this as actually a positive, because if he's going to Europe now, he went at probably a much smaller fee, right? As opposed to, Rodolfo Pizarro or any other Mexican player in the past in their prime that was super inflated, and no European team is willing to pay that amount coming out of Mexico. So the way that I look at it is, if he's going in already into Europe at a cheaper rate, then potentially if things go well, then Genk would sell him at a more market reasonable rate, because I'm sure that they have a history of selling to bigger clubs.
He's 21
than themselves.
Yeah, he's
21. Okay,
he's 21.
Yeah, so
yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. One of the things that I've definitely had a struggle with kind of one of the issues that Liga MX clubs have that others, well, I guess you maybe Brazil to an extent, but they've kind of have done a good job in Argentina of understanding their role in the marketplace. But at the same time, too, I think European clubs respect more the products that are coming out of Argentina and Brazil because of their, just their
they're a proven commodity. Whereas the
the
Mexican is a very high gamble, high risk, expensive, and doesn't always pan out because we don't have that track record that Argentina.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
I think with more risk.
Yeah, but I mean, with that though, is like, Mexican players can, even if you're really good, you can probably spend the rest of your life playing in the Liga MX and make it, live comfortably for the rest of your life, right? And so sometimes there just doesn't have as much incentive to go to Europe and then take a significant pay cut if you have to start from the bottom of the totem pole again and work your way up, which, I don't know, but the transfer stuff and the player stuff isn't my forte, so I kind of have my takes are usually hot takes, so I don't know if you really want to hear them. So
it's the adoration of Europe. Oh, he went to Europe.
Yeah,
and that could probably.
Yeah. It's like Godinho. He went to Cyprus. It's like it counts. It's Europe. But it's like, come on, man. It's like
back in the day, like not too long ago, all the Mexican, like because the Mexico-U.S. rival, all the Mexican fans used to make fun of the U.S. because the U.S. would say, "Oh, we have all these players in Europe," and the Mexican fans would say, "Yeah, they're in like second division,
Bundesliga.
They're in Belarus."
I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then now we're all celebrating dude going to Belgium.
Oh man!
Like calm yourselves down with your Mexican.
I forgot about that, Cheekies. I forgot about that, but I remember how that used to be a talking point that they were gonna surpass, the national team because they had like 80% of their squad in Europe. And I remember they had a youngster in what was his name, in Manchester United, and they thought he was gonna be the next best thing. But I don't think he ever got to break into the first team. But yeah, it's the same thing, and you can see it. Even Canada at one point had a lot of players in Europe. So I think it does get blown over proportion. I'm not saying it's not good, but it's not the end all be all of football. It's if you're in a really good team and you're a key player, then yeah, the way Marquez was and some of these other dudes. But just to be there, like the way Pulido went and he just rode the pine and then played in second division, pretty much just wasted 2 years of his career. I don't see what the point of that is.
So I have a question for you guys. Somewhat semi-related topic. It's related somehow to soccer, but what's your opinion or take on the blog Naked Humans?
Chiqui's favorite.
Oh man, you just triggered me, man. You just triggered me.
Flashbacks.
I just think that unfortunately Javier has surrounded himself by the wrong kind of people. He's definitely more sensitive, and his life coach le lavó el coco. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how he convinced him to have him in his life and basically let him mooch off of him, but I'm not a big fan of it. I don't really watch it. The only one I did watch was when he announced his move to the MLS, and it was a very emotional episode. So that was, we definitely broke that episode down, but I don't know if they've been uploading lately or what's been going on. I know he's like slinging Herbalife nowadays, but yeah, I mean, I don't. It's cool that you get to see the inside scoop of someone's life, but I don't remember anybody asking.
Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Like, I think it is cool, like you said, that we get to see the insides of somebody's life and perspective of things. I remember the earliest instance of Chicharito, and this was before Naked Humans. This was an Instagram live, and he was in Spain somewhere with El Pelon, I forget his name. And they're answering questions from fans, and they would get really defensive on certain questions, and he would express himself, just really straightforward on the things that he didn't like, and he would express his opinions on, especially on, do what you want to do, be your own self, don't let what everyone else says affect you. And he was just like, how when you're famous and you like post on social media and people tell you not to read the replies, this dude would read the replies and he would justify himself, and it just seems like that was his whole deal. And then his life coach would be there with him along the way, and he would become like his own philosopher, his own like psychiatrist, and he would try to spew that stuff out on these lives and these blogs. And so it turned him from a normal like star player that everyone loved and that everyone saw him on the field for his attributes on the field, into this other type of personality who became, what somebody might say is annoying or too sensitive, or reads too much into all the insults and tries to justify himself, amongst all these, like haters and things like that. So I think my take on the whole thing is, yes, it is interesting, but you do see a lot of his weaknesses and his insecurities on a lot of things, like when he said that he's a legend, or he says these things to build himself up, which it's very much true, he's a legend, but to say that shows like extra types of things. So I think I try to watch him, but it's sort of not really a good look, I think, for him. Sometimes you just gotta uh, choose the type of content you want to show.
I just can't really think of too many players that are doing a vlog as they're still like in the game. And if this was like a stock, like ever since he started his blog, I've noticed his goal production has been down. So it's like, are you distracted, or where are you putting your efforts in? It looks like you're spending more time on your social media presence than you are on the actual pitch, and that's my take.
So my take's a little different because I don't care. Well, I do have takes about the personal stuff, what he's been doing with his career and things like that, but more for me, my take is more about the premise, the whole premise of the show, with who the target audience is, why the fact that it's in English, in the English language, and who actually really cares about what's going on. So it looks like Beto's a fan. He seems to like the behind the scenes. It looks like
I'm a fan to make fun of it later.
So the way that I see it, and this actually is kind of tying back to some of the conversations that we had earlier today about the disconnect between Mexicans and Mexican Americans. So from my understanding, Diego, who's the life coach, he's Mexican, right? Born in Mexico. I think the other friend of theirs, I don't know who is. I think he's also Mexican, and then Chicharito's, of course, is Mexican, right? They speak good enough English, not knocking them on their English for whatever reason, but it feels like, and I could be wrong, but this is kind of the vibe that I get, and that's why it kind of gets, it bothers me a little bit, is that I think the show is tailored towards upper middle class Mexicans like from Mexico that speak English, that are kind of upper middle class, or the 1%, and I think they're trying to attract people in the U.S., but I really don't think Mexican Americans care about that show. Like, when I watched a few minutes of it before once. I think it was the one where he was on the phone call with his parents and everything. And aside from that being really cringe, because I definitely respect the moment that he was going through and empathize with him, but like, I felt like Diego really exploited that situation for the benefit of himself in the show. Like, why did he have to be in the same screenshot? I don't know if you guys noticed that, but he had to make sure that he was still within the shot of the frame. You know what I mean? And so that should definitely be a private moment. And so I don't know, that's kind of a different point. But I think that I'm kind of turned off by the fact of how it's being presented, is that Mexican Americans, or just the general public, whoever they want to watch, is supposed to care about what I can see them caring about maybe Chicharito because he's a legend, but the fact that now, like, okay, now we're going to go see what Diego's doing on his daily life, and the other guy that we've never heard of before in our lives, but now we're supposed to care. So I don't know. I have a lot of different thoughts about it, but I was curious to hear what you guys thought and to see if, I'm completely off base or do I make sense at all, or I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Like, who are you trying to target? Because you obviously are eliminating like most of the population in Mexico, because they're like,
yeah,
oh, add subtitles or something,
Yeah, he gets hate for that.
And I think that we're also underestimating the amount of English fans, like from from his times at Manchester United and West Ham United. I think he definitely won the hearts of a lot of fans there, and they still respect his name out there. Like he got a standing ovation for when he was at West Ham, even though he was, he was at Old Trafford playing against Manchester United, but the fans were still like, clapping for him and stuff. So he still has like a lot of love out there. So I think he's like also like catering to like those people, the non-Mexicans.
That's a good point.
Yeah. Also like in the Bundesliga too, he won a lot of hearts and minds in Leverkusen. So, I think, but I would love to see like the actual analytics, because on YouTube Studio you can actually see like the age and
so I'm on the page right now, and I think their highest, just kind of scanning here through the last year, their highest rated or viewed video was 10 months ago at, I think, when he moved to Sevilla, where it has like 470,000 views, and then I think the one where he moves to LA had 334,000 views, which I guess are good numbers. But then I think my daughters, who love watching like Play-Doh videos on YouTube and other dumb videos on YouTube, have views in the millions, right? So I think that's relative. So I don't know if this project for them has actually been successful, averaging, somewhere between the low 80,000 views. It looks like they had a YouTube video from a vlog upload from 5 days ago that only has 35,000 views. So I don't know if I don't know. It's all relative, right? To whatever else is out there on YouTube that actually is popular.
That's interesting though that you say that it caters to the like the upper middle class in Mexico.
That's my perception though, because that's what both the other guy and Diego kind of give off that vibe, that was the culture that they were raised in. Not that it's a bad thing, but I'm just saying is that the fact that they're not speaking in Spanish, where I would imagine that the majority of their target would be Spanish speakers, and the majority of Spanish speakers in Mexico just don't speak English or have a basic understanding of English. So you're automatically eliminating them. So it kind of comes off as like sangron-ish, like that, if you don't speak English, you're not good enough for us. And so we're trying to get people that speak English, and the fact that I don't know if they speak English just because of Chicharito's wife, but in most of the videos that I've seen or clips, sometimes she's not there at all and they're still speaking in English. So like I said, I don't know what's going on, but Jaime brought up a good point that I didn't really think about. Maybe it's for the audience in Europe, but based on the numbers that I'm seeing just from their views, it doesn't look like they're really, hitting their targets or whatever they want to do if they're trying to make money off of it.
I think the European numbers, it's a good point that Jaime made, but I think those numbers are small. Like, even though you made an impression on them, I don't think they're going to go out looking for, there might be a few, but the what makes me think of like the English speaking. So I tend to think, and I've seen videos of people making fun of people from Guadalajara. What do they call them? The white Mexicans.
Yeah.
And, like, they're dancing like reggaeton, and they're all in their nice clothes. It's sort of like the Pulido used to do his Instagram things when he's on the beach, or he's like dancing and doing his stuff in Guadalajara and partying and all that. And that's the audience that I see. They speak English. They understand it a little bit, and so they want to go watch Chicharito from Chivas and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, we've done videos. I think Jaime and I, like solo videos, just analyzing some of the stuff that he did, and it's just
yeah, we broke down that the one where he was crying to his mom or his dad, and we were just like, man, like,
yeah, there's some good things.
Why are you sharing this? It's like keep that to yourself.
Like, yeah, that's what I was saying too. Is like I definitely, I felt for him, and that's definitely a big decision, and and I think that shows a lot of heart from him to involve his parents and everything. But like, I don't want to see that just because like that should be a private moment. You know what I mean? Like, that's like, you know, the depths of his soul or whatever, and the fact that you know it was published, and the fact that Diego is still in there kind of shows the influence that he has in Chicharito's life too, right? The fact
influence.
that it's not his wife there, it's him, and he's sitting there making sure the camera's turned on, making sure that he's still in, that people are still seeing that he's there with them. Like, that just really rubbed me the wrong way.
So I did the math. The YouTube channel is a little bit over a year old. It has a total of over 5 million views. There's 32 videos, so they're averaging about 170,000 views. If you were to break, it down.
So I mean,
that's pretty good for what
it's not that bad. But I'm looking right now at a YouTube video that my daughters look at. It's a 10-minute Play-Doh video of SpongeBob, and it has in 2 years 13 million views.
Oh yeah, well,
so I mean,
I think you're underestimating the power of having kids and trying to get them. Hey, here, just shut up and watch this video.
That's true. Yeah.
I'm on a Zoom call, man. I'm on this conference call. Here, just watch this.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But I don't know. It's like you said, it kind of feels like this is one of those harebrained ideas by Diego. He has a weird ass last name. It's like Doofus or
Dreyfus.
And then one of the ones that was like really, really awkward was like, I think he was driving. Sarah was in the passenger seat crying about how like she's fat because she's pregnant. And then Chicharito's in the back, I think, with a camera. And he's giving her like a pep talk, like, you're beautiful, you're not fat, and screw anybody that says that. I'm like, bro, that should be coming from Javier, that should be coming from you, bro.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of what this whole show is about. It's about like showing, you know, increasing your own self-esteem and not letting all the hate barge in on you. And so it's sort of like it's, you know, they're boosting themselves up. That's why the whole thing with him moving to LA was actually a retirement. And he even said it. We all know they know it themselves, but they need to form it in their mind their own way to where this is good for them. This is not, you know, a step down, even though they know it is a step down. Everyone knows it's a step down. And, you know, they have to make themselves feel comfortable and feel good in that. And that's what the whole story is, like with her in that case. And there's other scenarios with that as well. I'll tell you, like, I show, like, whenever her, because we have my wife and I have four daughters, right? They're old now, but I on purposely, when I was watching some of those videos, especially when they had the baby, I purposely showed my wife her talk about her experience, and she just went off. and it was about like, I mean, I guess when you're wealthy and, you know, you want to do certain things, and it was, you know, it was just something that I found that was sort of weird, but I knew it would trigger my wife, so I had to show it to her. It was pretty irritating. I think that's when the boy was just born. She was and I'm not you know, downgrading, what is it called, postpartum depression or anything like that. She might have had like a little bout of that. She wanted to go out, you know, and, you know, have her typical, because she's a model, right? She's, you know, used to having, you know, a lot of you know, attention and wealth and all that. But with the baby, you're sort of like locked down. And she expressed that she was locked down. She was with him all the time, and then Javier was off training and traveling with the national team and stuff. So it's hard. But she sort of expressed that that struggle, and
she hated Sevilla because they didn't have Uber Eats.
Oh yeah, you can't get there. Really? I remember now. You just reminded me. There was no grocery store. You know, it was hard to go and find food, and you had to go.
She's like, I'm with the baby all day. I can't cook. There's no Uber Eats here like there is in London. Blah 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 blah.
So I had to show my wife, who was with 4.
So what did your wife say?
She just got
she broke her phone.
What kind of spoiled person is this? Because my wife, I at the time when my girls were like, I think the youngest was just born and the oldest was maybe 5 or 6 or something. So they were right in a row. So she was at home with like 4 little girls, and I had to travel for work at this time. So it was not a picnic for her. And she's one of those, I guess, like macha mexicanas. So she handled that like a boss. And when she just saw that like sort of softness, she did not appreciate it.
It does make me wonder how much of an influence that move to Galaxy was by his wife, you know, because I always felt that he left Sevilla very prematurely. I mean, he was only there for like 6 months, right? Like he wasn't even there for a full season. And I think he still had it, like he still had the juice to compete in Europe. Like I think on his debut, he scored a free kick goal. And it's like he was scoring goals every now and then. I think he still like could have had another like at least a full season, maybe 2 seasons there before taking that offer in the LA Galaxy. But we also don't know the whole, you know, happy wife, happy life, you know, back end, you know, how much of her complaining, like, oh, just go to LA, you know, I can model out there, I can do this, I can do that, you know. It's like, damn.
Well, she's got another baby coming now, so
number 2 in the oven, and it's gonna be Diego's baby. I want the DNA test. They gotta go on Jerry Springer.
No, that's not Jerry Springer. It's
Maury.
Maury, you are not the father.
You are not the father. You know, maybe this is a pilot for them to try and secure like a TV show in the States. You know, maybe that's what the whole YouTube channel is about. Maybe they're trying. Maybe they're trying to just like, hey, you know, look, we had a successful YouTube channel. We can after the MLS, maybe Chicharito will try and be like a, you know, TV star or something.
But she hated that, like the move from Sevilla. Wait, the move from England to Sevilla. I think she mentioned that was like a tough move, and then Chicharito was like off with the national team, and she had to move like pretty much all by herself. And then all of a sudden now she was going to move, and then they had to move back to they had to move to LA like sort of, you know, months after. It wasn't too long after. So it was like two moves in a row real quick. But I think the second move she didn't really complain as much. I didn't think about, you know, yeah, she wants to go to LA, that's the place to go and all that. But yeah, interesting.
She's like, my modeling friends are out here in LA. I'm like, I knew it. It was all you the whole time.
They didn't portray it that way, so that's, you know, she was off to the side, it seemed, during that whole ordeal.
Cool. Well, gents,
yes, I guess we're wrapping it up.
We're gonna wrap it up, but yeah, thank you all for hopping on and dropping that knowledge on us, man. That was definitely very insightful, and hopefully these Liga MX teams can. I know they're gonna be like late to the party, but they'll figure it out. They'll start to see the big picture.
Well, that's, like I said, that's the idea. I've been kind of, I said, in our daily work, where we specialize in market research, sports market research, and looking at trends and changing demographics and everything. And the way that I see things is, if they don't make moves soon in the next 10, 15 years, no one will care about Liga MX outside of Mexico, especially Mexican Americans in the U.S. are going to stop either just like other sports or like an MLS club or like Bayern Munich or someone else. So the time to act was actually several years ago to start building those seeds. So I don't know. We'll see. It's definitely an interesting. I look at this, and whenever I talk about this, I don't talk about it like a fan of the game. I am a fan of the game, but I try to talk about it objectively and say this is what the data is showing. This is what's trending. This is what the real life applications are. These are the conversations I had with clubs. Blah blah blah. And so that's how I'm able to make these quote unquote educated guesses or projections based on what I'm seeing, what has happened in the past, and everything. So it's gonna be an interesting few years to see how things will evolve.
So maybe my final comment doesn't really apply because you reminded me of it. Because you sort of, like your comment just now sort of changed my outlook on this. So I was going to make like a final sort of bet or prediction with you on the whole concept. And Joel sort of brought it up with Chivas USA. Like Chivas USA was a failure, and I sort of get that. And I want to sort of parallel that to Mundos, and we've talked about that a little bit, like Mundos, the channel.
Yeah.
You remember Mundos, Jaime? I think it's a Telemundo.
I never like had. I know of it, but I never really watched it.
There was a channel in English talking about like, I don't think just soccer, but like anything Mexico. I think they did music as well, like a top 10.
Yeah. It was definitely for like the younger demographic.
Yeah, and it was in English, but then I think it went away. And so my prediction is like this whole English coverage of Mexico and Mexican soccer is sort of like Mundos. And I think you said, Walter, that it was before its time.
Yeah.
If it was to exist now, like if they were to put all their effort and think long term, I'm looking at ROI, and my prediction would be that it might go the way of like a Chivas USA, or it might not work out, like even after 5 years. Sort of based on, but you're saying that, it might, well, I guess their push would make it work out long term. My thought is that if they tried to make it work out long term, I'm still thinking like the Mexican American is still gonna go its way of the NBA or NFL or something else.
I honestly think what Walter said is they're gonna start supporting the MLS, man, especially now with more and more like recognizable Mexican players jumping ship. And I mean, right now, Jonathan Gonzalez from Rayados, he posted on Instagram saying the last dance, and we're assuming that he's on his way to the MLS. So I think you're starting to see a lot more pochos start to wear those LAFC colors. And
I was about to mention LAFC. I mean, if you look at what Atlanta United has been doing, LAFC, in terms of a market outreach, everyone can feel a part of the club, right? Doesn't matter what color you are, what your economic background is, and so they've done a good job. I think other MLS clubs are still a little bit behind with that, and without naming any specific clubs, I think some clubs, they kind of market or target a specific subset of soccer fan, like I said, I'm not going to call anyone's out, but I feel like one specific club, to like that club, you have to, have a long beard, wear like a little golf cap, and drink craft beer to be a fan of that club, right? But if I'm Mexican American, like I don't identify at all with them. But if I'm Mexican American, or if I'm Vietnamese or Black or Filipino, I can probably like LAFC if I'm from that area, because the way that they attract me, they speak to me in a way that resonates with me, right? And same with Atlanta. So I think as more clubs start to adapt that type of marketing approach, where everyone feels a part of that community, then and if my dad or grandpa was a Club America fan, but if they're the ones that are right next door to me and they're talking to me in my language, something that I understand, and they have activations and involve me in the community, like I'm probably going to go for that club as opposed to Club America, right?
Yeah, I'm already starting to see that. I'm already starting to see, pochos here that, oh, my dad was a Chivas fan. My dad was but then you see them secretly wearing the LAFC colors, or like, hey man, like this team speaks more to me. Like this is my city. That's another thing too, is like, this is my city. It's like, and we have Carlos Vela. He's Mexican. So it's like, it's so easy to make the transition.
That's an anomaly. That's an anomaly, though. You guys are spoiled over there in LA and California, because you have that environment there to already like fall into. But let's say the whole United States as a whole, and you have like a pie of, okay, when kids grow up, they're going to fall into this category of sports fan because the NFL has, let's say, like 35% of the market. So this is 35% chance your kid is going to be an NFL fan, and 30 or 40% chance they're going to be NBA, and then whatever other interests there are, and then maybe like a 10% chance they're going to be MLS or soccer fan, or soccer can fit into MLS, or even like the U.S. national team. Like I talked to this guy who was he's born in Mexico, but he's a U.S. national team fan living in Austin. So that even happens, but those are so rare, and I think the parents are like the main thing. If Liga MX is going to be a huge market and interest for Mexican Americans, it's going to be because they grew up with a parent who was a Chivas fan or an America fan, and they not just watch the games with the kid in the room or around, they have to bring their kid and force the kid to watch and to have that passion for that club. And that's the only way that a Mexican American is going to have a good chance. And that's very, very common in LA. But in the whole other United States, kids are going to be playing like Fortnite and doing all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah, the future is esports for sure.
Yeah, well, I think, Bebeto, I think you underestimate the ability for a person to like multiple things and still adapt with all of them. So, like, I grew up, American football was my first love and passion. It actually still is. It's still my favorite sport. However, I can speak for myself and many others that are Mexican Americans that they have a favorite NBA team, they have their favorite NFL team, they have their favorite maybe MLS team, but they still have their favorite Liga MX team. Or they like football, basketball, baseball, but they still have a Liga MX team and that's their only soccer team. And so I think as you look at what's been happening, two things. America is becoming more diverse, and what I mean by that is, the Caucasian demographic in the few more decades will no longer be the dominant or the majority ethnicity. It'll be mostly Latinos and other demographics, and that's that diversity. People by context and background probably didn't like football first, and then what you're seeing with the effects that we're still seeing from sports participation with football because of the concussions with CTE, so that's going to become less popular. I think that's going to be dragged out longer, but over the next 30, 40, 50 years. Baseball's been a dying sport. I'm maybe exaggerating, but when you look at ratings and when you look at where baseball was 40, 50 years ago to where it is now, it's definitely been taking a decline. Basketball is increasing, soccer's increasing. And so I think when you kind of put all those things together, again, looking for putting my sports market research cap on, seeing what's been trending, what's happened in the past, what's currently happening, what's happening with the shifts in demographics, etc. Like, that's why I'm very bullish on soccer as a primary sport for people. But even if it isn't the primary sport for people, it's still going to be one of the top sports, and I can be a season ticket holder for the Dallas Cowboys, but also be a season ticket holder for FC Dallas if I have the consumption and interest to do so. And especially if in 10 years, if MLS increases its quality by a lot, that it's actually attractive to watch an MLS game for all the bad things that is spoken about MLS in terms of quality. So I understand your point, Beto, but I don't agree based on what I've researched and based on what I'm seeing, and just the fact that whether you're Mexican American or not, like, you can like multiple sports and still consume them and still invest financially and emotionally in each team that you like.
Yeah, I get that. We can see though. We'll have to see. I tried to make a poll today on Twitter. I asked and my following is not large at all, so this is sort of weak sauce. But I tried to hashtag like all the top trending things to see if I could get anyone else. But like soccer, only 7 people voted, so soccer got 85%, and then basketball got 14% of like what your favorite sport is. I put boxing, soccer, baseball, and basketball. Boxing and baseball got 0, but I mean that's a very small thing. But
and you know what, that brings me to another point. So Beto, you follow MMA a lot, right? You're into mixed martial arts and that type of world, right? So where was that world from a popularity standpoint 20 years ago?
20 years ago, I don't think 20 years. When did the UFC started?
Started around that time.
I'll tell you this, like, MMA has definitely changed since I was a kid. Like, I didn't know MMA until I was like maybe 14. So like 2004, 2005, that's when I started to first hear the rumblings of UFC. But yeah, it's definitely increased in popularity.
But I mean, and thinking of probably back in those times too, when they had their official Facebook page, and then with Twitter and everything, like, it was still probably really low, really like insignificant, right? But now when you look at it, it's becoming much larger. It's still not where it needs to be. And what I mean by that is, if you look specifically with UFC, if you guys remember, if you guys follow it, I follow it more from the business standpoint because of what I do, not so much on what's happening within the octagon. But if you guys look specifically, I don't know if you guys remember what happened a few years ago with fighters that they had to all wear Reebok gear in the octagon, right? Because it was an official UFC sponsor, and so that basically eliminated additional revenue income for fighters within the ring where they can get maximum exposure, right? And so the fact that UFC had to do that was to secure and stabilize their incomes, which means that they're still very much in a niche environment in growth sport. They're more popular than they were 20 years ago, but they still have a long ways to go relative to the NBA and the NFL. And so what I'm trying to say with that though is, Beto, as another counterpoint to you kind of talking about the lack of success for English media language accounts, like they're barely starting. Like they should have done this maybe 5-10 years ago, but the real return that they'll see is in the next 10 to 15 to 20 years, similarly to the UFC, when they start investing in this content, so that these 10 and 15-year-old Mexican American kids that speak zero Spanish can start to be attached to these clubs, so that when they are in college or when they graduate and they have disposable income now and they can travel to Mexico, or they can go to friendly matches, or they can have money to spend on merchandise, that's where that starts to pay off, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think it sort of does, in that the UFC bursted on the scene really, really quick. So if that could happen in the sport of soccer, then I can see that being a thing. But I'm still fixated in the cubby hole. This is where the fans are most likely going to be attracted to as they grow up. And I see that as being, the NBA or the NFL or whatever it is. But soccer, I still see it as a smaller sport. When I even go to Austin FC, when I go to look at Austin FC, I see a bunch of white dudes still. Every now and then I'll see a Mexican jersey, or I'll see some Mexican Americans or Mexican, but the majority is, just white dudes. So I think so from my perspective, and I might be it might be a Texas perspective as opposed to a California or some other location like Miami or something. But from my perspective that I'm seeing, if the U.S. is not soccer, if soccer isn't the number one sport in the U.S., then I don't see how all these fans will all sudden flock to that sport, and especially to and if they do, they might be MLS. But for it to be Mexico, the percentage, I think the chances of that are even smaller. But yeah, we'll have to see.
We'll see. I think like I said, there's still a lot of first gen Mexicans, second gen Mexican Americans that are that's right now the best time to make a move on them before they do get consumed by MLS. They get brainwashed into supporting MLS teams.
And every story I hear is about my tío or my dad or whoever, my family, we're always watching El Clásico, or we're always watching Tijuana play and all that stuff. So then they get that little spark, and then they go off. But if that spark doesn't really exist, or or it doesn't take, maybe it doesn't take. And
yeah, for sure.
So yeah, it's a good discussion.
Good discussion. Definitely a different episode than what we've done before. And again, thank you, Walter, for hopping on.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys. And enjoyed the discussion and your takes on naked humans. and yeah. Anytime you guys want to chat, I'm always available and willing to chat with you guys.
Yeah, sounds good. Next big topic, we'll let us know, or we'll let you know.
All right, sounds good.
Esports.
All right.
All right.
We want to talk some esports.
All right, everyone that's listening on YouTube, thank you guys. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. Everybody have a good night.